The most insane betrayals on paternity court.
Mr. Webb, you have been waiting 2 years for this day. You claim the defendant, Mrs. Forrest, left you for dead only to find out once you got out of a coma that she was pregnant and that the baby could be yours or her husband's.
I came home and found him and her in our bed naked, and I just, I can't believe it after everything I've done for her. I knew that they were sleeping together, but to put it in my face and be in my bed and me walk in and catch them naked, why would it be any different? She slept with my first husband and my second husband. And I didn't even know.
You were out of the country serving in the military. Your wife paraded around town with other men, and she has admitted to cheating multiple times. You claim you are not sure if you are the father of her third child, 18-month-old Liliana, and have asked the court for a paternity test.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Hadnot here is completely convinced that Mr. Matthews' wife is the reason why he's denying the paternity of her child. She also says that Ms. Matthews was once her best friend. But once she told her that Mr. Matthews had impregnated her, she also went ahead and got pregnant by Mr. Matthew and then married him. Mr. Matthews says he has doubts about being the father of Ms. Hadnot's child because she's known for sleeping around.
It wasn't a relationship, it was just like a friendship, and then we ended up sleeping together. But she was at the house where we slept together at.
And so she knew you were interested in him, or you guys had taken your friendship to the next level?
Yes. I feel that she just trifling because she knew from the front that we was together.
How long were you all together in that way?
Just that
How
one
long?
time.
Just that.
Then Mr. Matthews confirms that he had a sexual relationship with Ms. Hadnot. And then he says that he and his wife were best friends before that. But Ms. Hadnot doesn't agree with this version of events at all.
Your Honor, he said they was cousins. Ma'am, both of them.
Wait a minute, they told you they were cousins?
Yes, she
No.
said they was cousins living in the same house because he had another girlfriend at the house where they was at.
That cousin stuff, I never thought James was my cousin. I never said James was my
But
cousin.
she had no idea you were a threat at all because in her mind,
because
you all were...
in the initial beginning, I was.
This seems to back Ms. Hadnot's point. She was in a relationship with Mr. Matthews, got pregnant by him, and then Ms. Matthews got into the picture. That's the problem here. Can you imagine how betrayed Ms. Hadnot must have felt when she found out that her best friend was having a baby by her baby daddy? But now to the real question. How does Ms. Hadnot know that the child belongs to Mr. Matthews and not some other person?
But I also, when Jay never asked me.
How many days apart did you sleep with this other man?
2 days or 3 days is one of those two.
Don't even know.
Oh well, Ms. Hadnot. It looks like it's scientifically impossible to be sure of who the father of this child is. But Ms. Hadnot doesn't want to accept this. She says she knows who she slept with and is certain the father of her child is Mr. Matthews. However, Mr. Matthews says he knows why Ms. Hadnot is so desperate to get him to claim this child.
She's always been after money, Your Honor. It's been times where she, can you take me here? It's always been about money, finances. She's a gold digger.
So you not only felt like she could have, well, she did sleep with the guy she admits to, you said could be some other people too that she's not admitting to.
Well, if she didn't tell me about that, what else secrets are under the closet?
Okay then, Mr. Matthews. You're a straight shooter. I like that. Mr. Matthews also says that he doubts he's the child's father because he was only called to the hospital after the baby had been born. And not only was he called after the birth, Ms. Hadnot didn't call him herself. Instead, her mother did. Mr. Matthews claims this means that they had someone else present for the birth of the child, but he must have flaked.
You told me you had slept with another
You didn't
man.
ask.
I'm supposed to know.
I wasn't in a relationship with you in the first place. You was a one-night stand, and that's what it was.
Yeah, well, so obviously if I was a one-night stand, who else was a one-night stand? So that's why I have doubt. So what kind of woman is that, Your Honor?
And Terry knew the whole time her dang self.
I knew that she was pregnant because, like I said, we were friends. We were close. We lived together. We spent most of our time together and everything. And when she got pregnant, she came and she told me that she was pregnant. I made the mistake and that I was wrong in the beginning for sleeping with James. I didn't intend to fall in love, have a baby, and...
Mrs. Matthews, do you know how unlikely and impossible it is to mistakenly sleep with someone without protection? Mistakenly get pregnant? Mistakenly having that baby? And then mistakenly marry them? There's no way you didn't mean that. Nobody can make that many mistakes at a stretch. You meant it, And you did it, and now we are here to deal with it.
She was my everything. Terry was my heart. I was there for Terry through all her stuff.
And I
no
was
matter
there for
what.
her.
Grandma, through everything. When her grandpa, all that, I was there for Terry.
Yes, she was.
And she was there for me, but she betrayed me. So what type of friend is that? No matter what I did and what I did wrong, she was supposed to have my back no matter what. And she still
Ms. Terry Matthews is the sort of friend you never want to have. She might wake up one day and mistakenly set your house on fire, and then come to court and say it was all an innocent mistake and that she didn't mean to pour gasoline on your roof. That's the sort of thing she might say.
Ms. Hadnot, your best friend comes to you and says, I'm pregnant by the same guy too? What did you think?
To tell you the truth, Your Honor, and I told her straight up, you know what? You can have that, because I never wanted him.
Yeah, so what was the big deal in the workplace? You never wanted me. You pushed me away.
It don't matter.
since
That
high
was my
school.
best friend. You made me.
Mr. Matthews is just acting obtuse here. Does he really think that Ms. Matthews and Ms. Hadnot were going to remain best friends after he got them both pregnant? How would that even work? And now to make things worse, Ms. Matthews is telling Mr. Matthews that Ms. Hadnot's baby might not be his. So Ms. Matthews is basically betraying her best friend over and over and over and over again. But Ms. Matthews says that's nothing but a lie.
Never, not once, denied or said that Jamari was not James' son. I get on James when he get into his feelings about his doubts. And I'll get to saying, James, let's go get Jamari. Let's do this and let's do that. I push that. I'm the one that goes to the door.
Horrible, horrible behavior from Mr. Matthews. And it gets worse because the 4-year-old in question is old enough to ask serious questions about his father.
So, Ms. Hadnot, in your statement to the court, you stated that you're trying to break a cycle. You want to make sure your son has his father.
Yes.
That's right. There's no reason an innocent child should be suffering because of the mistakes adults make. At this point, you sort of feel sorry for Ms. Hadnot and may think that the child is Mr. Matthews' biological son. Anyway, it's time to see what the DNA results say about all of this.
Mr. Matthews, you are the father.
Thank you. I told you. I hate you. I promise.
Ms. Nadeau is the sort of woman you don't want to know or meet. She slept with her partner's best friend and then told him about the affair on Christmas Eve. The affair was bad enough, but what made it worse was the revelation that the best friend in question, Mr. Zara, may be the father to 2-year-old Cameron. Mr. Santilli, Ms. Nadeau's partner at the time, took the news badly as anyone would, and it took 2 years for him to mend his broken heart. In any case, he's here now to see whether Cameron is his child. Mr. Santilli is completely shattered by the betrayal of Ms. Nadeau, and you start to feel pity for him. But as strange as it might be, Ms. Nadeau might have a good explanation for betraying her boyfriend that way. You see, Mr. Santilli had broken up with her saying that she was too good for him. He says he did this because his grandfather was passing away and he was mourning. But Ms. Nadeau has a different recollection of those events.
Anyways, so I continued to go and see his grandfather while he's in the nursing home getting sicker, starting to pass away. The day he passed away was the day his best friend told me that really he had broken up with me for the...
And you guessed it. It was this best friend, Mr. Zara, that Ms. Nadeau had eventually slept with. The crazy thing is that Mr. Santilli had no idea of this at the time, and Ms. Nadeau slept with Mr. Zara on the very day Mr. Santilli's grandfather passed away. And guess what? Ms. Nadeau came with Mr. Zara to the funeral. Yes, all of this happened without Mr. Santilli being aware that they were sleeping together.
You don't really know who the father is.
No, I can't say.
Generally speaking, you should not sleep with your best friend's girlfriend or any girl they've been in a relationship with. But somehow, Mr. Zara and Ms. Nadeau forgot all about that. Ms. Nadeau says 2 consenting adults can do whatever they want. That's fair, but it also means 2 consenting adults often have to drag themselves to paternity court. You can't play the game and then say you don't like the results. It doesn't work that way.
But I'm saying, is there any part of you that said, he just lost a person that meant everything to him.
No,
I'm his
because
ex. Maybe sleeping with his best friend wouldn't be the best idea?
Absolutely not. Because if I mattered so much to him and it was so important, he wouldn't have left for the girl upstairs.
But again, Ms. Nadeau makes a solid point. If she was so important to him, he wouldn't have left her. Anyway, consenting adults do what they have to do, and now all three of them are in court to get this sorted once and for all. Let's hear a bit from Mr. Zara, the best friend in question.
First off, he told me to do it.
Away.
He told me specifically in his house, yo, I don't care about this girl. I have another girlfriend. He just sit there and lied and said,
them words never left my
Yes,
lips.
they
were
did.
going
I
out
was
with the girl
standing
upstairs,
right
bro.
there.
That's left my
You
lips.
said
And
they're
even if they
adults,
did,
let
as
them
my
sleep
brother, you
together if
should've
they
known
want to
better.
sleep
It don't matter.
together.
How you
my
gonna try
brother,
to
you
tell me,
should've known
yo,
better.
you could do it?
That
After
is not
everything
the
I did
truth.
for you,
No.
you were my brother, kid.
Don't
You
matter.
should have known better regardless.
Hold up. Known better? Okay, yeah, maybe Mr. Zara should have known better. I'm willing to concede that. But do you know who also should have known better? Mr. Santilli, for breaking up with his girlfriend for a random girl. That's who should have known better. And if he had known better, maybe none of them would be in paternity court. Just maybe.
He would. Said that, like.
Did you know she
No, I
had
did not
already
know.
slept
I did not
with
know
Mr.
that they were sleeping
Zara?
together.
Hold
They
on.
both
He
denied
asked
it.
me at his house. He said, yo, bro, Kayla just told me that you had sex with her. And I denied it. And Kayla came out right on the porch and said, yeah, we did. He's lying to you. And the only reason why I denied it to him was because his grandfather was sick.
It's getting really feisty here. Mr. Santilli says he didn't know the child could belong to Mr. Zara until 2 years later. But Ms. Nadeau denies this and says even when he was cutting the umbilical cord, Mr. Santilli knew that the baby might not be his.
When he was first born, everybody said he looked just like Dino. But I wasn't too sure. I just kind of kept my mouth shut because I thought, maybe it's my guilt.
Ms. Nadeau today thinks that the likely father of the child is Mr. Zara because she claims the baby looks a lot like him and even behaves like him. That's all well and good, but it's not a DNA test. Unfortunately, Mr. Santilli had already developed a bond with this child.
Truth.
Okay.
We had this discussion weeks before Christmas Eve.
Hold on, that is the truth.
She didn't just say he's not yours. She said it ruthlessly. She said, "How do you feel you're holding your best friend's kid, you loser?" Which is why I snapped. Which is what led to my incarceration.
That is not what I said.
That's exactly what she said.
Thank you.
Right there.
Thank you.
She tried to air the dude out. The kid's emotions was already hurt as it was.
When you're in jail, you find out stuff better on the street than in jail than you do on the street.
Listen,
2 days
the
later, I
bottom
find
fact-
out.
Okay, Ms. Nadeau, now that's just too much. However, Ms. Nadeau defends this by saying she's a single mother who can do whatever she wants. That's one of the coldest things I've ever seen on paternity court. Anyway, things went south, and Mr. Zara started taking up fatherly responsibilities for Cameron. Today, Cameron calls him Dad and calls Mr. Santilli by his name.
Is Cameron your only child?
No.
They have another baby together too.
We have a daughter together.
Which we?
Me and Mr. Zara. And I have another son.
Not only did Mr. Zara sleep with the ex-girlfriend of his best friend, he also made sure she got pregnant for him specifically, even after knowing the sort of mess he was in with Cameron and his best friend. You know what? Doing that takes the sort of chutzpah that you hardly find amongst people today. Many friends betray their friends and hide it. But Mr. Zara is not scared of his betrayal. He owns it. And yes, Mr. Zara still isn't with Ms. Nadeau. She's still a single mother. It's the worst.
No.
What is going on with you? What happened that would lead you to be in this position?
I don't know.
Yes, it's a disaster. And the only thing that can save this disaster is to find out who the real father of Cameron is. Is it Mr. Santilli or Mr. Zara?
It has been determined by this court that Cameron's biological father is Mr. Santilli.
Do you know that feeling when your best friend goes running to your boyfriend to tell them all about your different escapades with other men? Well, Ms. Stremke knows that feeling very well. Her friend told her partner, Mr. Jaramillo, about her different trysts with other men, and now Mr. Jaramillo doubts that both of his children by Ms. Stremke are his. And oh, Mr. Jaramillo had a threesome with Ms. Stremke and his best friend, and it was unprotected, and there was a baby born out of that incident. Of course, Mr. Jaramillo says that child isn't his as well.
Times we were denied. I feel like they can't trust their dad because he denies that he's their dad half the time. And my 4-year-old Naviana knows. She can hear the, well, I'm not her dad anyway. And it just gives her doubt. And when she looks at her dad, there's not going to be respect there. I can't expect her to do what he says if he's going to say.
That's right, Mrs. Stremke. Children are extremely perceptive, and you don't want your child growing up in that sort of situation. Mr. Jaramillo says this is regrettable, but he really can't do anything about it since the paternity issues get brought up in fights. You know what you can do about that issue, Mr. Jaramillo? Stop fighting with your partner in front of your kids. It solves all of your problems quickly.
Her paternity.
I had just gotten out of a relationship with my son's father and had moved back to Iowa. Well, I ended up where I had slept with another man.
Now, Mr. Jaramillo hadn't met this friend before, but he believed every word of what she said. Ms. Stremke, of course, knew the friend in question and argued that it was all a lie.
Which I really don't understand, because how can you base your daughter's paternity off of some girl you had never even met?
Well, it was one of your friends, you know. You'd spent time with her.
What did she say to you exactly, Mr. Jaramillo?
She said that the baby that Ms. Stremke has been impregnated with wasn't mine, that she had been sleeping with numerous males.
Another thing is that Ms. Stremke and Mr. Jaramillo had only been together for about a month before Ms. Stremke told him that she was pregnant. To make things worse, Naviana was born about 3 weeks early, which makes it seem like the child truly doesn't belong to Mr. Jaramillo. Instead, it's for the man Ms. Stremke slept with before meeting him.
That was about the time that the other males were present.
I was upfront with you and told you that there was one other person before we had gotten together.
You said one other person, and then came another fellow that your best friend told me about.
I had never slept with anybody but one person besides you, and that was before we had gotten together.
What about the second daughter? What doubts does Mr. Jaramillo have about her? And exactly how did he get those doubts? The answer will probably surprise you.
And then it was maybe a couple weeks later it got brought up, it'd only be fair if we had a male, and you. So I said, okay, all right, that's fine. It's something new and everything. And I had changed my mind on it and decided, because I have so many like body issues, not like in the way I look after I've had a child and everything, that I decided no. Well, he persisted and kept bringing it up, and he ended up bringing his friend over.
You brought your friend?
Mr. Jaramillo's friend didn't come over for pancakes. He came over for a different sort of cake. Mr. Jaramillo invited his friend to have intercourse with his wife, and none of the 3 people involved used any sort of protection. Imagine if they did. It would have protected both of them from showing up in paternity court today.
Sir?
It was a mutual suggestion between Amber and I. We had gone through it back and forth between Ms. Stremke and I. It was a toss-up back and forth. One minute she'd want to do it, the next minute she didn't. And from being with Amber, I know if she's going to do something, it has to be on the spot. So to get it done and over with, yeah, I did bring this friend of mine.
Look, if you want to spice up your marriage, here's some good advice. Don't invite other people into it. If you want to get more excitement in your marriage, go see a movie, get on a jet, and go for a vacation. Don't invite your buddy into your bedroom and then not tell him to use a condom. Anyway, let's find out who the real father of the child is.
Mr. Jaramillo, you are the father.
Miss Phillips here is suing her ex-boyfriend for $1,000 in childcare expenses. She also wants a DNA test to prove that he's the father of her 2-month-old daughter, Jordan, whom he has refused to meet. Mr. Gibbs here says Ms. Phillips isn't up to his standards, whatever that means, and that she's an extremely promiscuous woman. And as such, he's sure he isn't the father of her child. Therefore, he owes her nothing and never wants to see her again after this episode.
Well, Your Honor, I thought this was going to be the best situation. I thought that he was actually the one for me. You know, and I think it started for me when, you know, he went to this convention, a spiritual convention, and he came home that night. He was just like, you know, can I just wait till the morning, just go to my grandmother's house? Because, you know, it was late.
It's middle of the night.
Yes, it was like 12, 1, 2 maybe.
It looks like Mr. Gibbs got a special message from God telling him to leave Miss Phillips, and that's precisely what he did. However, Mr. Gibbs has a few disagreements about this peculiar version of events. In fact, he says that's not how it happened at all.
Miss Phillips out and take her to a hotel?
A lot of stuff led up to this event.
Okay.
Okay, first of
Fill
all,
me in.
The first thing that happened was we went to a Christmas party that her friend was throwing. She's getting approached by a guy. I guess they know it's a part of the family. He kind of just ignores that I'm even there. I'm asking her, I said, hey, you going with me or not? No,
Ms. Phillips says she was only trying to defuse the situation because she knows the family and things could have gotten messy if she hadn't stayed back.
So out of protection for him, you were just trying to diffuse it.
Exactly.
And say, I'm just gonna stay.
Exactly.
After that, it follows up. I go to Miami with a friend of mine. 2 days later, I get a call from a mutual friend that says she was involved in an event.
I called you and told you.
My mutual friend told me first. They left and went to a party where I know what type of girl she is. She's a very promiscuous girl, put it like that, herself.
And it gets worse. Later on, Ms. Phillips admits to Mr. Gibbs that she cheated on him while he was out of town.
And he was telling me, I was with this one girl, man. We was in the back seat, we doing it, and all of a sudden, a guy in a black car pulls up. And he was like, I said, the black car pulls up. He said, yeah, she told me to go ahead and let's get out because he's crazy. It's my boyfriend, he's crazy. I said, did the black car look like this one? And he was like,
yeah, that was a friend of mine. And we was talking in front of my house when he came.
Ms. Phillips agrees that she did have intercourse with that person, but says that Mr. Gibbs cheated on her too. She says when she checked the bag he brought up from Miami, she saw condoms and other things she shouldn't have seen. Well, that sounds bad, but this isn't couples court, it's paternity court.
Had the relationship ever been positive?
Yeah, it's been
for
good.
You?
Yeah, it's been good. A lot of times, cause it's been times that we actually did things together. I mean, we acted like a family. He had his 2 girls, I had my boy. We was, we was doing things we were supposed to do in a relationship. We just had a real relationship. It just, when he get in that mind frame where he assuming that something happened, it turns sour. Which I understand, because if you cheat once, then you think he gonna think you always cheating. But then that's why I kept myself around him.
And that there is the problem. Ms. Phillips cheated once and Mr. Gibbs can't stop thinking she's been cheating on him. It's a horrible situation, especially for the child, but that's where the disconnect is.
In your statement to the court, you also talked about text messages.
I had one to jail for about 2 months. And when I got back out, the first thing I'm gonna do is go through your phone. Multiple dudes are in there making flagrant text messages. I'm horny for you, daddy, and all this other kind of stuff.
And that's a lie. It wasn't sexual.
Multiple text messages from multiple different guys. Five different numbers at least.
Wow, that's a lot. It looks like Ms. Phillips and Mr. Gibbs both don't care about the sanctity of their relationship. He had girls seeing him in prison, and she was texting multiple men outside prison. This is sad because, in the beginning, Ms. Phillips said she thought he was the one for her. Turns out that's not true at all. Interestingly, Mr. Gibbs here is still married to his wife, and Ms. Phillips found this out just 2 weeks after meeting him. Yet she continued in a relationship with him for 4 whole years. And then, Ms. Phillips got pregnant.
The situation was when I had just moved into a new apartment. We had just gotten a blow up because it was either her friend had a birthday party. And they go out on the night on the town. I go by her house, she's not there. I'm knocking on the window, she's not there. And there's been multiple times where I go by there, she say she's there, she's gone. She done left her kid or whatever, gone. 2 weeks after I moved into my apartment, she was nowhere near to be found. When she find out that she's pregnant.
Ms. Phillips says that night she called up her friend for emotional support. And this male friend gave her that emotional support that she didn't get from Mr. Gibbs. Generally speaking, guys, you really shouldn't date people who won't give you the emotional support you need. You especially shouldn't date them if you have to call up other people for that emotional support. And oh, she slept with that friend that night too.
Please state your name, ma'am.
Raven Gibbs.
And you are Mr. Gibbs' sister, am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Tell me what you have to add to this situation that can help the court understand what's going on.
Okay, well, first of all, it's just too much between the both of them, back and forth. This has been going on for years. And when my brother first told me that she was pregnant and that she did have a child, I thought it was strange that she left and went to Tampa.
The question now is this. If Ms. Phillips wanted Mr. Gibbs to be a part of the pregnancy, why would she leave in the first place? That makes absolutely no sense. Well, let's get the DNA test results and make some sense out of it.
Mr. Gibbs, this court has determined that you are her father. How do you feel?
I'm completely fine with that. It never was a point where I felt like I didn't want it. Well, I mean, we got the determination, and I can move on and be a father.
I would be that nasty to not know who my baby daddy is. I can't deal. I can't.
Mr. Bradley has wondered who's his father for 19 years and is in paternity court to get an answer to that question. Mr. Tessiner here is 100% sure he's not Mr. Bradley's father. And that's because Mr. Bradley is too tan. That's right, Mr. Tessiner's argument is as mind-blowing as possible. But today, we will find out who's telling the truth.
And Mr. Bradley, first, please explain to the court, how has your life been not knowing the identity of your father?
It was really tough going to my football games, not having a father there at my football games. I joined Boy Scouts. I had to go with a friend and his father and kind of felt like a third wheel when I watched them interact with each other, and it's kind of tough and not having a father myself.
At this point in Mr. Bradley's life, he thought another man was his father. But one day he heard his mother say that another man, James Tessiner, was his father. Since then, he tried to meet Mr. Tessiner and was successful when he was 13. Afterward, he didn't see him again until he was 18. Mr. Tessiner, of course, disagrees with all of this.
Explain to the court why you're so sure you're not Mr. Bradley's father.
We only dated for about a month. I remember pulling over on the side road one time to make out. I cannot even remember having sex with her, and I never knew that she was pregnant or that a baby was born.
Never?
Never.
You were never contacted?
I was never contacted.
Thankfully, Mrs. Bradley is in court today, and she says she of course remembers sleeping with Mr. Tessiner. She says she's not completely sure she told Mr. Tessiner that she was pregnant, and he may be right on that.
So what he's saying may be true.
Right.
You may not have even told him.
Right. And when I had my son, I didn't put anybody down on the birth certificate as the dad. I wasn't, sure. I thought it was my boyfriend I was dating at the time. I hadn't seen Mr. Tessiner in a long time. So I didn't put anybody down, and the nurses said, well, you're gonna have to put somebody down as his dad.
Mr. Bradley says his mother is lying. In fact, this makes him so angry because the other man she put on the birth certificate went to jail for child support, and he did that over a child that wasn't even his. Do you know how cruel that is? To make things worse, Mrs. Bradley made sure that the man signed the birth certificate against his will.
The court ordered someone on the birth certificate, and at that time, I told the courts that I felt like my boyfriend then was his father.
Without ever having a paternity test.
I think the other man had a paternity test.
Did you believe when you provided that name he was the biological father, or you knew?
At that time, yes, because Mr. Bradley was dark-skinned when he was born. And then his facial features started to change. And he looked more and more like Mr. Tessiner.
And throughout all of this, the other man kept paying child support. This is one of the cruelest things I can imagine happening to someone. Mr. Tessiner here will do anything not to have Mr. Bradley be his son. He will even testify to how much resemblance Mr. Bradley bears with the other man.
I think he looks like the other man, and I heard that the other man took a DNA test before he started paying child support. Have Lillian to pull his britchy legs up. Look here. See how white I am? Look how white I am. Pull your pants leg up, Lil. Mr. Bradley.
So you're saying his skin tone?
His skin color.
I wear shorts.
He's darker than me.
So you're saying the other man took a paternity test?
Okay, Mr. Tessiner, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. It's impossible to tell their skin color apart, and Mr. Tessiner cannot seriously think that's a great basis for determining the paternity of a child.
She's going after the other man for child support in 1984, and he's a roofer, and roofers only works part of the time. I'm in the military in 1984. If I'm the dad, why didn't you go after me then? I paid child support on my other kids.
So you're saying this whole thing has been masterminded?
I think she just changes it to whoever's doing better. That's who she tells him his daddy is. That's what I believe.
Wow, those are strong allegations, Mr. Tessiner. Are you really sure about that? Anyway, on the matter of whether the other man did a DNA test or not, we have an obvious answer.
I talked to the other man, and I asked him myself, point blank, I said, was there a DNA test done? He said no. When I was 18, I made her go pick him up, and I told him in the car that I was not his son, that I've met James, and I told him how much we looked alike and how much we acted alike.
Did the other man ever have doubts that
Yes,
you were
he
his
did.
biological child?
Mr. Bradley sure has gone through a lot on the journey of figuring out who his father is. Mr. Bradley is so sure that Mr. Tessiner is his father because relatives of his mother told him that his mother was already pregnant when she met the man that is on his birth certificate. Despite this, Mr. Tessiner is still on his racial argument, if it could be called that.
A lot darker. He's got straight hair. Before I went in the military, my hair was long. It was almost like an afro out here like this. His hair's straight as a stick. The other guy is half Cherokee Indian. His mom.
So you feel like this other person?
I believe DNA was done already.
So you just convinced that a DNA test was done even though the man says it wasn't?
I ain't heard the man say it wouldn't.
Did you hear the man say?
Mr. Tessiner here is starting to sound like some race scientist. It's better for everyone if we leave the science part to the DNA test and actually get the results. Let's see who Mr. Bradley's father is. Well, it turns out race science isn't that accurate after all.
Mr. Tessiner, you are his father. And I know you said you feel like you missed out on a lot.
I know I did.
But at least everything's on the square now.
How do you feel, Mr. Bradley?
I already knew.
You have requested clerical fees in the amount of $50. should Mr. Tessner be determined to be your biological father?
Most men in paternity court come to avoid responsibility for their child, but not Mr. DeMarcus Patterson. Mr. Patterson is here because he believes DeMarcus Patterson Jr. is his son and wants to prove that to his junior's mother, who claims another man is Patterson Jr.'s father. The woman in question, Miss Knight, is in court today to clear the confusion and assign responsibility for DeMarcus Patterson Jr. to the appropriate man.
So, Mr. Patterson, you testify you've been there since day one. Please explain.
I've been there since birth, since he came out the womb, since he entered this world. When the doctor first, held him up and finally gave him to him, I witnessed him just completely quit crying and looked me dead in my eyes. And that's when, at that moment, I knew I became someone's father. So at that moment, like all the doubts that we had before, I just knew like they were just out the window and just...
That sounds very traumatic. Imagine giving a child your entire name, being there for his birth, and then learning years later that he's possibly not your son. It could shatter any man. Ms. Knight should have a coherent explanation for this happening.
I guess you could say doing the house hopping thing, because like in order...
Doing the what?
The house hopping thing, because when she moved out of her parents' house, she ain't had nowhere to go, so let her live there too.
I mean, that's how we started our relationship. We were together every day since then. DeMarcus ended up cheating on me within the time we were together, and I ended up leaving with Ladarius, with the alleged father, and basically we didn't work out at all.
So Ms. Knight left Mr. Patterson, went over to stay with Mr. Ladarius Siegler, and had unprotected intercourse with him. Well, it was protected at first, and then they ran out of condoms because they did it so many times. And then Mr. Knight told Ms. Siegler to get her pregnant, and that's what happened. Once she realized she was pregnant, she called Mr. Patterson and let him know. Unfortunately, Ms. Knight couldn't get along with Mr. Siegler, so she went back to Mr. Patterson.
I called DeMarcus and let DeMarcus know, I'm pregnant right now, and it's a possibility that it's Ladarius' baby or your baby. DeMarcus told me to come home.
So you got back together with Mr. Patterson.
Because me and Ladarius were like oil and water, and we could not do it. So I told and begged DeMarcus. I didn't beg him. I said, DeMarcus, come get me. And DeMarcus pulled up in the car and was like, where's your stuff? He carried my stuff on his back and got in the car, and we went on about our way. Him knowing that I could be pregnant by somebody else, he was okay with the situation.
Well, Mr. Patterson, if you were okay with the situation then, you cannot say you're suddenly not okay with it anymore, especially as so many years have now passed. On the day of the child's birth, Mr. Patterson made sure the child had his name.
Well, when you tell this woman I've always wanted a junior.
He ain't say that.
I ain't really get to pick the name, because remember, it's always up to the woman to pick the name.
Please,
gonna pick whatever.
DeMarcus said, I don't care what you think, this is my baby, and we're naming him DeMarcus Latarius Patterson Jr.
So you signed the birth certificate?
Yes, Your Honor, I signed the birth certificate.
Willingly?
Yes, Your Honor.
Without a doubt at that time, you went on and signed it?
Mr. Patterson saw the child and suddenly forgot all about the DNA test. That's so heartwarming. Unfortunately, the DNA test results today could prove that you should do a DNA test no matter what you think when you meet a child that you aren't completely sure is yours. If Mr. Patterson was so smitten by Patterson Jr. that he chose to give him his name, why did Ms. Knight, who knew just how uncertain Mr. Patterson's paternity was, go along with the name?
At that moment, DeMarcus said, that is my baby. His name is going to be DeMarcus Latarius Patterson Jr. And I don't care what y'all got to say, and that's what it was.
But if you know the real truth and you know that he might not be the biological father, why give in to the name and name this child after him, because knowing that there's a possibility?
I was in love with him. We were together all the time. I mean, he demanded it, that's what he wanted. He denied the DNA test. So I'm like, you know what?
Okay, that's great. Now the question is this. Why are they here now? What changed? Did the scales suddenly fall from Mr. Patterson's eyes?
At what point did you realize that it wasn't all working out? That it really could potentially be the other man's child?
Well, it was a conversation between me and DeMarcus we had often. I mean, DJ turned about 3 months, and I looked at him one time, and I was like, wow, he kind of looked like Ladarius.
Oh, so you all were open about this?
Yes, we were always open. We would take rides to the gas station. He'd show me pictures of Ladarius, like, you sure this like that?
But things got really feisty when Ms. Knight started allowing Mr. Siegler into her son's life, and then they became one happy family. Mr. Patterson started taking a step back from providing for young DeMarcus at this point, and who can blame him? No one. Let's see what Mr. Siegler has to say about this.
Mr. Me and Kaylin having dealings or intimacy, I was the one who told her she was pregnant. And when I told her she was pregnant, she say, well, if you feel like that, take me to the clinic. So I did. So when we got back from that situation, we had conflict. She like, it could possibly be his. It could possibly be yours. So therefore now, like she say, oil and water.
Well, the only way to know who is DeMarcus's father for sure is to get the paternity test. So let's look at it and find out.
The biological father is Mr. Siegler. You are DJ's biological father, Mr. Siegler. What do you feel right now?
Hurt. Could have been avoided.
It could have been avoided.
I love that little boy right there. I know he's gonna be happy. You can bring him out right now, he's gonna run straight to me.
Mr. Patterson, are you all right?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
I know this is hard.
I'm hurt about it. I looked at him as mine, but...
Ms. Lawrence says that 6 months ago, her mother told her that the man she called her wasn't really her father. Ms. Lawrence's mother, Ms. Simmons, kept this secret from Ms. Lawrence her entire life and only shared it because she ran into her ex-lover on the bus and realized he could be her daughter's father. Now they are in court with Ms. Lawrence's potential father to find out if he could be Ms. Lawrence's biological father.
Please tell the court how your mother revealed her 28-year secret to you.
First off, I just want to say that I am definitely emotionally frustrated with her. She called me about 6 months ago, and when I answered the phone, she was hysterically crying, and of course, I didn't know what was going on. And I'm asking her, what's wrong, what's wrong? She's beating around the bush, telling me all these random stories.
That's the sort of news that could change your entire life. And Ms. Lawrence only got to know it when she was already 28. Ms. Lawrence felt betrayed because she was best friends with her mother and thought that they had no secrets. But they had one huge secret. In fact, they had the biggest secret they could have.
Let me hear from you. What happened?
I ran into Rudy on the bus one day on the way from school. And I'm like, I know him, you know, from my past. I've never forgotten him. And I say, excuse me, what is your name? Is your name Rudolph? And he says, yes. I say, Rudolph Rockamore. He says, yes, it is. He asks me, who are you? And I look at him like this. I'm like, for real? Really?
And then Ms. Simmons told him that there was a possibility that she had his child. Can you imagine how shocking this must have been to him? Imagine getting on a bus without knowing you've had a daughter for 28 years and getting down from the bus with that knowledge. It must have been the most transformative bus ride of his life.
So we, you know, conversated for a while, like, where have you been? I haven't seen you in a long time. When did you come back to LA?
She conversation. I want to know what the conversation would happen when it got to the good part.
She, look, Miss Simmons, she want to know what happened as it relates to her and the fact that this man could potentially be her father.
Well,
how did it get to that part of the conversation?
In the conversation with Rudolph, I told him it's a possibility that I may have your child.
To be honest, that doesn't seem like a fair basis to cast paternity doubts. But Ms. Simmons was the one who gave birth to Ms. Lawrence, so she probably knows what she's talking about. Anyway, Ms. Simmons says she never told her daughter about this possibility because she didn't want to break the bond she had with her father. She thought she would never see this man again, so she believed there was no reason to ever bring it up. She was prepared to go to her grave with it.
So you knew, Miss Simmons, this man really may not be her father. You made that call on your own, and you've held this secret by yourself all these years?
Actually, I wasn't even really sure because me and her dad had broken up. And when I went back home and got with her dad.
Ms. Lawrence says she had a great relationship with her father, and her mother never wanted to disrupt that relationship. However, she sticks with her decision to not bring Mr. Roquemore into her life. But now that Mr. Roquemore is in her life, his family members are making the best of it.
Mr. Roquemore, she's been sending him pictures, and she's told him pretty much that he's your dad.
Basically, I mean, I don't know if she told him that he was my dad, but it's to the point to where his family is like, oh, she belonged to us, and she's a Rockymore for sure, and I'm a Lawrence.
Miss Simmons, I need to understand from you if you really get what this 28...
Incredibly, Ms. Lawrence has never met this man. If she met him now, it would be the first time she would ever see him. If he turns out to be her father, it would be the first time she would be seeing her father.
Ms. Lawrence, how do you feel right now?
I have butterflies in my stomach. I really do. I don't feel like there's any, like, attachment or, like, he could be my dad or...
You didn't feel anything?
I look at my dad, the person that I call dad, I look at him and I'm like, that's my dad. That's who I look like. You know, my mom's brown skin, my dad's dark skin, and...
But we all know too well that in paternity court, those sorts of arguments don't matter. People can think they look like someone and end up not being biologically related to them at all. Let's get to the end of this road and find out who Ms. Lawrence's father is.
Mr. Roquemore, you are her father.
No, leave me alone right now, please, Mom. Stop. Oh my God.
Miss Lawrence, there's some tissue for you.
It was pretty difficult to determine who was telling the truth between these two. First, Miss Brewington said Mr. Lee, who she claimed has been the father of her son since the day he was born, is refusing to take care of the baby all because he doesn't want to spend his money. Mr. Lee, on the other hand, had quite a different analogy for the whole mix. I hope you guys are ready for an epic battle of fatherhood. This is like anything you've ever seen before.
Prove your 3-year-old son Giovanni is Mr. Lee's biological child, and you claim Mr. Lee has been a father to your son since the day he was born and is denying paternity because he wants to avoid paying child support. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Lee, you say you've known from day one Giovanni was not your son, and you are here to prove Ms. Brewington is a liar and has been using you for money. Is that correct?
Now, Miss Brewington was on firm ground when it came to who the father of her child was. There was no shaking her mind in that courtroom. She was ready to put up a fight, trust me. But there was no denying the fact that their relationship wasn't a pleasant one. There were so many ups and downs, you would even wonder why they are still together.
Sleeping with him, we were actually working on our relationship. We already have a child from a previous situation. We got back together. We're working on us. So when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't think it was going to be a shock or a surprise or anything like that.
And you say you know 100% you're not the biological father of Giovanni.
Yes, Your Honor, I do.
And Mr. Lee had a totally different tale to tell the courtroom. He was 100% certain the child could not be his. When he was asked why, his reply was one you would never expect to hear in the courtroom. He said when the baby was being conceived, there was no form of relationship that was going on between him and Miss Brewington. He even denied ever being in a relationship with her. Now that's ice cold.
You don't believe you were working on the relationship at the time Giovanni was conceived?
No, not at all.
You weren't together?
No, not at all.
Your Honor, I was living with him. We were living in the same household, in the same bed.
Were you living in the same house?
Around the time, yes.
But you weren't together?
Exactly.
So were you sharing a bed?
Yes, ma'am.
And fluids.
No.
Clearly, yes.
Jump right into the tale of pregnancy. Miss Brewington finds out she's pregnant. She picks up her phone to tell the supposed father that she has his baby. Is he excited about the news? Oh, you can bet he definitely wasn't. He even had her do 3 separate pregnancy tests just so he could believe she was pregnant. If you ask me, I'd say he has some real trust issues.
I told him, he did not believe me at all. He went out and got 3 pregnancy tests, made me take all of them. They were all positive. And he was like, well, that's not my baby because we didn't have sex. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We've been having sex. And then the last time we probably had sex was Valentine's Day, maybe a few days after. I'm like, this is our whole love baby. No, come on now, my son was due. He was born in November.
As things start to get really heated up in the courtroom, the truth bombs start to drop. And trust me, these bombs are going to leave your mind scrambled. Now, while Miss Bruton was getting pregnant, Mr. Lee was selling a different story to his friends. He said Miss Brewington had been eating a lot of fast food, and that's why she was getting fat. At this point, we can all agree that he definitely doesn't want to be the father of the baby.
No, he was telling people I was just getting fat. He was like, she just eats a lot of fast food. Everybody was my friends were rubbing my stomach. I'm showing ultrasounds to people. He's like, don't believe her, she's just fat. The entire time. I'm talking about, I'm going into labor. He's like, no, you're not.
What kind of denial is this? Mr. Lee, you taking denial too far.
This is what it was. She was trying to get back with me.
Even with all the denial and trust issues Mr. Lee had in his heart, he still went on to sign the birth certificate. As if that wasn't enough, he even went on to give the baby a name. Now, if you have so much doubt about a child being yours, why'd you sigh and give the child a name? If you ask me, there's something these two aren't saying because it's starting to look really funny right now.
I actually told him I was like, you don't want to wait until we do a DNA test. I offered the DNA test in the hospital.
She did not say that, Your Honor. She did not say that.
But you signed the birth certificate, right?
Yes, I did.
If you had all this denial and you say she eating fast food and this isn't even a pregnancy, but then you get there and execute a birth certificate?
It was the right thing at that moment. We already had a previous child, like I said, so.
You just go around signing birth certificates.
Oh, Miss Brewington had enough of Mr. Lee's doubts and trust issues. It got so bad that she decided to get a DNA test for the baby when she gave birth. But guess what? When she offered, Mr. Lee turned her down. I told you something didn't seem right with their stories because it just doesn't add up.
He offered the DNA test. Why didn't you take it?
I figured when I signed it, I knew she was going to put me on child support because I was already on child support. Now, with the previous child that we had, I had to do a DNA test at the child support services. I figured if I sign it, they're going to take me right off after I do the DNA test. We came there, and then they said, no, we don't do a DNA test because you already signed the birth certificate.
Yes!
She kept saying.
Well, it's finally time to unveil the truth after so many lies and deceptions. The day of reckoning is finally here with everyone itching to know the truth. Are you ready to find out? I bet you are. So take a deep breath because here it comes.
Mr. Lee, you are not the father.
Told y'all.
Hold up.
I already knew it. I told you.
Don't look at me like that. I don't know God's
Who
plan.
else?
You're not here on this earth to live in denial, because that cuts off the possibilities for your life.
This is quite similar to the previous case, except this one has so much more drama. Miss Holman was in court to prove that she was very certain that Mr. Drumgold was the father of her child. Was Mr. Drumgold on the same page with her? Hell no! He believed Miss Holman was Inti 8 with at least 2 different men that weren't him, so there is no way in the world he can be the father. Fingers crossed, people. This case is going to give you a lot of goosebumps.
Ms. Holman, you opened this case against Mr. Drumgold because you claim he denies fathering your 2-month-old daughter, Alani. You want Mr. Drumgold to step up after today's results, prove what you believe. He is the father. Is that correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Mr. Drumgold, you claim there is no way you are her daughter's father because you know for a fact Miss Holman was sleeping with at least 2 other men at the time of conception.
Goosebumps. Miss Holman wasted 0 time in diving into what has been going on between her and Mr. Drumgold. Oh, she was very good at giving details. She claimed Mr. Drumgold had never shown up when it came to the aspects of being there for her and her baby. But when it was time to get down in bed, he wasted no time knocking at her door. Way to go, Mr. Drumgold. He sure knows what he wants.
Anytime I call Mr. Drumgold and I say, Alani needs this, Alani needs that, it's crickets. But if I call Mr. Drumgold and I'm like, I want some or let me give you he's at my door.
Okay, that's on the menu. That's on the menu. Okay, let's move on. So you feel like he's denying the baby?
Yes, Your Honor.
Apparently, these two didn't start off as the Shrek and Fiona kind of fairy tale. When they started, it was strictly to have a good time in the back room. If you know what I mean? The crazy thing about the situation was that Mr. Drumgold was in a relationship, and he never told Miss Holman. Miss Drumgold is sure good at keeping secrets, if you ask me.
I got to have you, like.
Oh, that's what you told him?
Yes, he said, I'm feeling you too. So we made it from there.
So why did it never become a relationship?
During the time I was in a relationship.
But he never told me that. Mr. Drumgold was in a so-called relationship with several other people.
So, Mr. Drumgold, how did you find out Miss Holman was pregnant?
She called me one day and she said that she was pregnant. And I think she said she was like 10 weeks.
As you would expect, the courtroom turned into a blazing inferno within minutes. Mr. Drumgold and Miss Holman were here to drag each other until there was almost nothing left. Right from the moment Miss Holman found out she was pregnant, Mr. Drumgold already had his doubts piling up about him being the father. He even had proof, and trust me, your jaws are definitely about to drop.
More gentlemen that she was messing with.
More gentlemen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so how do you know she was with other men?
As far as I came to her mother's house and another man was rubbing her belly.
One at a time.
He knew I was dealing with other men because I was very honest with Robert, Mr. Drumgold, up front. I was super honest with him, and I told him, like, I'm doing me, you doing you, because I know how you get down.
She didn't deny it, apparently. She admitted she had been fooling around with other men since they both agreed they were not committed to each other. Now the question in the picture is, how is she so certain he is the father? I mean, she's been sleeping with other men, so why can't they be the father? Trust me, I have so many questions as well. In her defense, she claimed she knows he is the father because the baby looks exactly like Mr. Drumgold. Oh, she is one funny ass woman.
Look at that! She looks just like her.
To me, she looked like her.
Yo.
To me, she looked like her.
Boy, boo.
And far as...
Boy, boo. Stevie Wonder can see that your child. Get out of here.
So you are admitting through ample testimony that you were intimate with somebody else during the time.
Absolutely.
She admitted it now.
Okay, so we got that. She admitted it.
Now.
How
Don't forget
did
that.
you find out is the question.
Mr. Rich, who apparently happens to be a possible father, walks into the courtroom. Oh, he was in no joking mood, trust me. It was as if Miss Holman was playing games with his mind. She also told him he could be the possible father of her child while they were intimate behind Mr. Drumgold's back. Like that wasn't enough. Mr. Rich already had a father-daughter bond with the child. There's so much chaos about to erupt.
When she was pregnant with Alani, that Alani was your child?
Yes, she did.
And so what kind of relationship have you built with Alani?
I built a father-daughter relationship with her.
You have?
Yes, Your Honor.
And so you have a very real tie with this beautiful baby?
Yes, I do. I feel like I've been betrayed, man. I feel like I've been let down. I feel like I gave my all to somebody that don't care about me.
Miss Holman had some real nerve, all right. She openly said in court that she knew Mr. Rich wasn't the father, but she told him anyway because she knew he was going to take care of her and her child. Trust me, Miss Holman needs some ass whooping because why would you do that to an innocent man? Oh, she's not a nice person at all.
Your Honor, I asked Rich to come back. I knew that Rich wasn't the father, but I knew that he would be there for me. I knew it. I knew he loved me. In spite of everything I've ever put him through, Rich has always loved me, unconditionally. And so I took advantage of that. I didn't want to be by myself while I was pregnant. And I knew that the person I was pregnant by didn't about me.
The person you thought you was pregnant by.
I know who I was pregnant by, so shut your mouth.
The person you thought you was pregnant
Anyway.
Miss Holman, calm down. Mr. Drumgoat, calm down.
Well, there's no going back now. The situation is just very messed up, but the truth is about to be unleashed. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. The answers lie in front of the judge. Hold your breath, folks.
Out to him, did you ever get a response?
No, what I was thinking is she found a way like she always do to smooth over her lie. And cause that's what she do.
No, that's not what I do.
So who did you think she was lying to?
No, I knew for a fact she was lying to both of us.
Miss Johnson's ways were definitely not pure. She had been fooling around with a different man who wasn't her husband. Now she's landed herself in one of the most insane situations ever. She has no idea who the father of her child is. Could it be her husband or could it be her boyfriend? Nobody knows for sure. Let's find out, shall we?
You confess you have found yourself literally caught between your lover and your husband.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you now have a daughter and you say you're unsure which man fathered her. Now, Mr. Anderson, you argue that the defendant, Mr. Johnson, is forcing his wife to keep the child from you.
Yes, ma'am.
You believe 4-year-old Briley is your daughter.
Mr. Anderson, who happened to be the boyfriend in the picture, was here for one thing: to claim custody of his child. He made it clear to the courtroom that he wasn't going to back down without a fight. The mind-blowing revelation about this situation was that Mr. Anderson knew Miss Johnson was married and still went on to get intimate with her. What makes him think he could be the father of the child?
She was out on the porch and had on some little short shorts, and we exchanged numbers, got to texting and talking. Before you know it, we was having sex, this and that. Even talked about having a kid at one time, you know, during the little 4 months we was
So
just...
you saw her outside, you thought she was good looking, and you said, I want to meet her, and the next thing you know, you all were having sex.
Yes, ma'am. And you know, we got real close, got to talking, and
But did you know she was married?
Apparently, this was a situation of two people in a relationship coming to form a totally separate relationship. How ironic, wouldn't you say? Now, Miss Johnson's husband was no saint, all right? The cheating started with him, and all she did was go on to have her own fun, well, at least so she claimed. Guess this wasn't a heaven on earth kind of marriage.
With some other woman, and I wasn't gonna let him just go out and have a good time and me to sit home and wait for him, so I went out and done my thing too.
Okay, well, at least you told that truth, didn't you? So your position was your husband left you to go be with another woman. Now, is that the reason you were separated, or this happened during the separation?
That happened before the separation.
While Miss Johnson was busy getting intimate with both her husband and Mr. Anderson, she got pregnant. What did she do? Oh, trust me, you're going to want to know. She told her husband that she was pregnant, but wasn't sure if it was his. He didn't mind at all. All he wanted was to be a daddy. Cute, wouldn't you say? Mr. Anderson, on the other hand, wasn't just going to let that happen. He wanted to be part of the baby's life.
Up front with my husband, I told him that I was pregnant, that I wasn't 100% sure that it was his, but he was excited. He said, we're going to do this. I also called Mr. Anderson and told him that I was pregnant, so that I was going to be with my husband.
That he was going to be the daddy, that she didn't want me to have nothing to do with her.
When did you find out she was pregnant?
I want to say she was probably like 2 months before I found out when she called and told me
I didn't
about
want to confuse Briley with two different daddies.
Now, when Miss Johnson told Mr. Anderson that she wanted her husband to be the father of her child, he was initially cool with it, at least so he claims. But Miss Johnson said it was all a lie. The courtroom turned into a charade, with both Mr. Anderson and Miss Johnson calling themselves layers. Apparently, she told her husband she wasn't seeing Mr. Anderson anymore, but that wasn't the case. They hooked up again just a year before. Wow.
When I got pregnant, right around the time when I got pregnant, which I'm not sure if Brad or Randy is father.
That was the last time?
Yes, ma'am.
Last year.
Last
That
year?
is a lie.
Wait a minute, because this calendar was from 2008. What happened last year?
We hooked up.
Miss Johnson, is this true?
No, ma'am. He's lying.
This never happened.
That never happened.
When the child was born, her husband was by her side. He really wanted to be a daddy, honestly. But hold up, things get pretty funny here. Mr. Anderson calls Miss Johnson to find out how the pregnancy went. Guess who picks up the phone? Mr. Johnson. Yep, you heard that right. What happened afterwards was completely out of this world.
Well, you know, I'm real. I'm real.
I'm a man, you know. Hey, you call, I'm gonna handle
Did
the
you
phone.
hand her
Yes,
the
ma'am.
phone and not hang up on this man?
Uh-huh.
And look, I want the truth. Did you do that because you know in your mind there's a possibility that he could be the child's father too?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
All right. So to this day, Riley's now 4 years old.
Now, Mr. Anderson brought in a whole new set of cards to the table. He was asked if he ever got a chance to meet the baby, and his answer shocked everyone in the courtroom. He said he met the baby on several occasions. He even gave instances that he could remember. But here's where things get out of hand. Miss Johnson keeps all of this a secret from her husband. I guess she wasn't over Mr. Anderson at all.
Has met me at the ballpark and let me see Briley. Her mother
That is a lie.
sneaks around, let me meet her, go at grocery stores, at football games and stuff. Yes, they have, but it's always, he don't know nothing about it when they do it.
We may have seen each other at the ballpark or something, but I've never intentionally carried my daughter to meet him.
Your Honor, it was last year when she turned 3. I called her mother and asked her, could I bring her a birthday gift?
Well, it's finally time to bring the baby daddy drama to a close. There was a lot of fighting and accusations between these two, Mr. Anderson and Miss Johnson. The question still remains, people. Who is the father of the baby? Well, let's find that out, shall we?
Her biological father is Mr. Anderson.
So,
Your Honor, may I see my little sister? May I see my little sister? And I can show you that she does not, like, she doesn't acknowledge the fact, like,
Acknowledge that she doesn't know y'all.
I hope you paternity fans are ready to get your minds blown to bits because this case will do just that. Miss Slade claimed her ex-boyfriend is denying the paternity of her son, and trust me, he had a very good reason. Mr. Simpson claims she wasn't the only one she was intimate with. There were 2 other men in the mix, and one of them could most likely be his brother. It's a crazy case, people. Let's jump straight into it.
You admit you had sex with your ex-boyfriend, Mr. Simpson, as well as with one of his good friends. Now you claim Mr. Simpson denies paternity of your son. Mr. Simpson, you argue that not only did Miss Slade admit to having sex with one of your friends, but there was also a third man who you believe could be the father of her son.
They had plans to get married, but the seed of doubts that were planted in his mind by Miss Slade just wasn't going to let him follow through. He claimed he always knew Miss Slade wasn't always completely honest with him. Mr. Simpson wasn't just jabbing. He had instances to back up his claims of not being the father of the child.
We're actually planning on getting married, and I come home, and her son, you know, he waits one day, he sits me down and he talks to me. You know, I help raise him. It's my little dude, you know, we kick it. So he goes on to tell me about, you know, one guy, this guy I know, he parks his truck behind the house to hide the car from him coming over, spending the night. Then he goes on to tell me again that another guy.
To tell you how insane their relationship was, the whole neighborhood knew what was going on at every instance. Every time, Mr. Simpson would hear rumors that Miss Slade was messing around with a few of his guys, and there was a chance she could be dating someone else. Trust me, that's enough to give him a heart attack.
People coming home, streets talking to me, telling me, yeah, she might have messed with one of your homeboys, she might have messed with another one, which was Eric, which the rumor was that she had messed with Eric and another one of my good friends. So we actually have a conversation at my grandmother's house with her and the other guy. They sit there, I bring them together like I'm gonna do. If it's something I heard, I'm gonna bring you together. I wanna know the truth.
All right.
I asked them about it in my grandmother's kitchen.
I promise you, the allegations that were flying around in that courtroom could make 2 countries go to war with each other. Now the story about his brother comes into play, and there's a whole lot going on. Apparently, while he was away for a bit, Miss Slade and his brother were going down in the sheets behind his back. Miss Slade is one heck of a woman, I tell you.
My brother get oral sex from another woman. So now I thinks to myself, okay, you telling this story, y'all telling me that, oh yeah, okay, old girl was doing this and doing that, but you're sitting here watching. So that's the first time I'm like, really? And then they go on to finish the story off that they stayed there.
A video statement from his brother is played in court, and it shakes the atmosphere in the courtroom. His brother says she was not just intimate with him, but with the entire town. Those are some heavy accusations right there, if you ask me. Did Miss Slade deny it? I'm sure you know the answer to that already.
Accusing me of sleeping with her, thinking that that's my son, but he's definitely not. Keisha slept with the whole town. She's nasty, and my brother needs to leave her alone and get his son and go on about his business.
Can't none of them do for his son, and that's a lie too, sir.
That was strong allegation.
Right, and I can't believe that he
I have
just
some
said
more
this
evidence that I
because
want to submit.
when I first got with him and he got locked up, he told me to watch his brother.
I mean, it's one thing to be accused of a particular offense, but to be accused of that offense with proof? Now that's a totally different ballgame. Mr. Simpson had enough evidence to show that he wasn't just talking out of his mind.
Back right here at the bottom, right-hand corner. This is a picture of my brother's birthmark in the same exact
Jerome,
spot.
hand me those.
Same exact shape. They look identical. I mean, he does
So
look
you're
in favor of my
saying
brother.
that your brother and your son, child in question, they both have very similar birthmarks in the same part of their body.
Same exact spot.
It's high time we brought this paternity war zone to a close. It's been one tricky ride here, but all that suspense is about to be over. All eyes are on the judge as she unleashes the truth.
The child's father has been determined to be Mr. Simpson.
Please take him, your baby. Please help.
I'm his father. I'm going to be a father.
Good.
I'm going to be a father.